Hey, Joe Gilder here from HomeStudioCorner.com. Just started a mix this morning and I'm very early in the mixing process, but I wanted to stop and shoot this video because there's something that I do on most of my mixes that I've not really shared with you before, and it's really quick. It'll just take a second, but I think it might be helpful for you. So here's what I got so far. You probably can't hear that well. That's not the point. These are the raw tracks I've just imported into my session, organized, set up, and done some basic level setting, a basic static mix. At this point, I should tell you that I tend to do this phase in mono. We talk about that a lot. Instead of having things panned left and right, they come right up the middle. The central station has a mono button, Studio One has a mono button. However you can get it mono, that helps with a lot of things. This video is not about that. What I want to talk about is how I tend to do my panning in mono, at least during this early phase of the mix. Now that may sound ridiculous. Why would I pan something to the left if I'm only listening to it in mono? It's a good question. For me, the way I think about panning, I don't think about it in super creative terms. I think about it more as a manager. I think about it logically. If I've got two guitars, and just by looking at them in the session, I can tell they're playing roughly the same thing, or at least they're playing during the same sections of the song. To me, that's a pretty good indicator that they would work well panned away from each other. So I'll pan one left and one right. Now, this is where, if you've heard Graham Cochran or Ian Shepherd's talked about it some, both sides of the idea of doing LCR panning, this is what I'm doing in this phase. I'm either panning, there are three panning choices, up the middle, hard left, hard right, and that's it. Now later in the mix, I may evolve those choices and massage the placement in the panning field later, but for now, those are my three choices. And again, I'm doing it in mono, so I'm not even really listening to how it affects the mix. I'm just making decisions based on what I see and hear in the session. Now that may sound counterintuitive and even uncreative, but for me, it's super helpful because you may see that this video is coming out in early 2016. There's a thing going around Facebook where people are taking a 30-question test and it gives you results, and I don't know how scientific they are, but it gives you results that say what percentage you are right brain versus left brain. And typically, right brain is creative, left brain is more analytical. And I assumed I would be high in the creative side, right? Well, according to this test, and again, I'm not putting a lot of stock in it, but I was around 65% left brain, 35% right brain. So my wife made fun of me because she is not a musician, but she measured more creative than I did, which is just really interesting. But it makes sense. My brother-in-law Joel, who's a bass player, measured super high in the left-hand side of being an analytical mind, although he's a great musician and has a great ear for production and things like that. I think there's a correlation there that doesn't come through on those tests because music is very mathematical. I know that seems like it's killing everything, but if you think about it, if you go and take a music theory class, you're learning a lot of math. You're learning about scales. You're learning about different ways to form chords, time signatures, timing. It's all a very mathematical thing. Now, don't kill the music with your math, but what I'm saying is, for me, panning is like that. It's a very logical thing. If I have three, for example, last month in Dueling Mixes, we did one of my songs that the main rhythm instruments are one electric guitar, one electric piano, and an organ. So I'm looking at those three, and without even hearing much of them, just seeing them in the session and seeing that they're all pretty much playing throughout the entire song, I make a decision. I've got to decide who gets the middle, who gets left, who gets right. And that's the main panning decision for that entire song. For me, it was guitar in the middle and the two keyboards left and right. And I went from there. So for me, don't overcomplicate or artisticate. Don't make the panning process and the panning decision-making process this big ordeal. Just look at stuff and put them in pairs. Either it's a middle thing or it's a side thing. And if it's a side thing, then find something else that'll match it on the other side. You can do this visually by just looking at what's playing at the same time. Okay, this keyboard and this guitar only play together. Might be a good idea to try panning them. You can always change it later, but what you'll find is if you do that for 3 minutes, go through your song and just do some quick panning on everything, when you finally flip to stereo later on, you'll start to really like what you're hearing without having to go in and do your panning then and having to listen to everything and doing all the A-B listening and all the stuff that, to me, wastes a lot of time. You can just get in there and say, hey, this sounds great. Or you can say, you know what, that guitar over there really needs to come back to the middle. All those decisions are still available to you, but by doing this more logical panning approach, I think it'll save you some time and just help you stick with the music and the mix and the tones, which is really what matters at this phase. Panning's important, but getting all those tones right and making those panning decisions quickly is what I think is a good key to a great mix and getting it done in a reasonable amount of time. Okay, that's it for me. I gotta go back to mixing. I'm Joe from HomeStudioCorner.com. Be sure to subscribe and click the like button and the thumbs up button. And come say hi on Twitter and Facebook, Joe Gilder Music. I'd love to say hi to you. See ya. Bye.